ultra Tuscan orange grapefruit. My God, America is imploding.
Welcome. It's Fanzone debate. We got another match for you. We have two rookies this season. Cameron Holzmann going up against Joe Farrelly. Going to be an interesting one. Quite excited about this because Joe, not new to debate, but new to this debate league. Holzmann, I don't know what else he's done in his life when it comes to debating. He debates movie opinions all the time, but now he's here to actually debate for his second match. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Cody, you're here. How are you?
Oh, how am I? Awful. And I'm really pumped to watch two nerds debate about movies and stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad Brian's here because Brian always matches my enthusiasm at times. So we're going to be on the same page. But yeah, Holtzmann going to yell about some shit that he thinks is important. And Joe has got a cool accent because he's from the UK. So he's got 3 points up for that alone because Canada doesn't give you anything but nothing really, just backing out of shit. So
fair. Brian, you're also here. You're very enthused. Also, tell us why you love Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I guess I got to make sure I'm being extra enthusiastic this time so I'm not matching Cody. Yeah, no, I like him. I'm glad I'm back here, getting another chance to just hang out, listen to some debate. I will say that Joe's already got a strike against him because at least at the time of filming this, he has seen No Time to Die. I don't see it till Wednesday, so kind of hold that against him. But we'll see where it goes from there.
Absolutely. So we'll bring in the lower seated competitor first, Mr. Farrelly. Joe, welcome back. This is match number 3 for you in Fanzone debate. You lost to Kirk at the beginning of the season, but you just had a match against Jacob E. West. Won that to get your spot here today against Holtzmann. How you feeling?
Yeah, I feel not too bad. It's approaching 3 o'clock in the morning, but hey, I've done this before. I'm used to this. I say I'm off tomorrow. It doesn't bother me. I can handle it, I'm sure. But usually once it gets later on in the argument, sometimes at this late hour, it can get difficult to find the words. But at least I get more prep time on this, unlike trivia, where you have no idea what's coming. At least I know what's coming.
Absolutely.
From my side, anyway.
That's fair. So we will bring in Mr. Holtzmann. Cameron, you are back after your debut match, I believe, against one Adelaide Spence in what some would call a video that aired on the internet. How are you feeling about debating Joe?
I'm feeling good. If you go way back into the history of the fan leagues, to a league we don't really talk about anymore, Joe and I have debated before, and it was a very interesting debate where judges reworded questions themselves when judging and said, this is my favorite episode of The Simpsons, so I'm voting for that one, regardless of the arguments. But it's also a match where I somehow managed to convince the world that Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana is better than an episode of Doctor Who. So anything can happen today.
That's fair. You're muted, Cody. Which wasn't Cody.
Directed Venom?
He did, yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. So we're going to get right into it. Here's how the show's going to work. The two players drafted categories. Cody and I then came up with questions for said categories, and Joe and Cameron are going to debate those questions. At the end of the question, we are going to write on our handy-dandy boards who we think won the question, and best 2 out of 3 wins the point. First person to 3 points is the winner of the match. You'll have a 1-minute opening, followed by a 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing for each competitor. Are there any questions from the competitors as we get into the first question?
Nope.
No.
All right, let's do this thing. Alrighty then.
I'll never get over that.
Ooh, okay. So, your first question. was drafted by Mr. Farrelly. It comes in the category of Star Trek. And the question is, what is the worst performance in a Star Trek movie? Joe, you drafted this, so you get to go first. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
At its heart, Star Trek has always been a franchise that has tried to push boundaries and give its audience a sense of perspective around many different issues, from drug addiction to all the way through to equality. When it comes to Star Trek Generations, though, showing one of its most popular series leads, Data, struggling with emotions for the first time in his life, this could have been a really dramatic and powerful performance. It could have been a very powerful side to the proposed epicness of Kirk and Picard fighting together. And instead, what we're presented with is a crude, cringeworthy comic relief. By the time Star Trek Generations had aired, Spiner had been playing Data for 7 years. He owned that character and had the opportunity to give us a fascinating insight into a being experiencing emotions for the first time. It's a clunky performance from someone who's shown that they can do better.
Time. Okay, we'll move over to Mr. Holzmann, who has 1 minute when he starts talking.
So, on the whole, Star Trek, in my opinion at least, is not a great franchise, and it's full of a lot of bad storylines, a lot of bad effects. But there's only one performance I could think of in all of Star Trek that I think is truly bad and truly terrible. And that is Persis Kambata. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. In Star Trek, the motion picture, Persis Kambata plays Lieutenant Ilea, a.k.a. V'ger in the film. And she is just sucking the life out of this movie. She is, even before she becomes V'ger, she portrays her character with so little emotion, with so little enjoyment, enthusiasm, that it's just hard to watch and uninteresting. And then once going through the interesting part of her story arc, she doesn't really do anything to make it dynamic and make it interesting. And it just lowers the film because the entire film is centered around what her character is going through. And so by making her the center of it and having such a bad performance, it's not only terrible on its own, but it weakens the film.
Time. All right. Persis, whatever. And Data. It's late. 5 minutes. I'll come in and give you a 1 minute warning. Don't talk over each other or I will hit you with a stick. Have fun.
I think Sheldon Cooper once said it best in that Star Trek the Motion Picture has issues down from costume design to scripting to art direction, many different things about it. Persis Kambata herself, the performance is mechanical, but she's playing a embodiment of a probe. Data is supposed to be this being experiencing emotions for the first time, and when you contrast it with what he does in First Contact, with Data dealing with temptation of moving closer to humanity, you can see what could have been possible in Generations, and it's just what you don't get at all. And he's been playing that part for 7 years, and I think the writers have been writing for Star Trek for 7 years, so it's not just the script. Brent Spiner has ownership of that character, and the performance just doesn't match up with anything that came before or since.
But at the end of the day, I think you're saying he's playing a robot who's experiencing human emotion before. That's something that no actor, regardless of who they are, has ever actually experienced. It's a hard thing to do. Being a human who is just losing their emotions and going blank and turning into this space alien probe thing, that's at least something where you can portray the idea of losing your emotions, portraying the idea of going from someone who is feeling all the time into feeling nothing. As well, you can quote Sheldon Cooper, a fictional character, all you want, but if you do that, I'm allowed to quote straight back at you from the man William Shatner himself, which in his book Star Trek Movie Memories referred to Persis Kambata as, quote, a stunningly bad actress. And if William Shatner thinks that you are bad at acting, you've got to be terrible. Like the man who cannot read a line, who released an album of him reading the words to Rocket Man, thinks that she's bad and she's the center of the film.
But even in some of her Ilea moments, not necessarily the V'ger probe moments, but in even her Ilea moments, I think in a very short space of time, she actually manages to convey her feelings for Decker very well through only a very few lines, and just the look she has in her eyes when she first sees him. I think straight away that Ilea and Decker have feelings for each other, and I think just the look she gives him, she expresses that very well. Whereas Data, we see him express a range of emotions from fear, humor, joy. And the only time you get a glimpse of the potential of what that could have been is when he finds his cat alive. Not when Geordie returns to the ship safe and well, but when he finds his cat alive. And it's that misrepresentation of that performance that causes the biggest issue for Brent Spiner in Generations.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like you're saying, we see Brent Spiner portray a range of emotions. We see him portray all of these things, and we can tell that he's doing that, not through the script saying, oh my goodness, Data, you're scared. Oh my goodness, Data, you seem angry, but because he can show it in his emotion and he can make himself cry and tear up, even if it is something as small as finding his cat, which is a very small human moment that he has. Whereas with the relationship between Ilea and Decker, a lot of why it becomes evident to us as the audience is that we're told it's there. The chemistry between them honestly isn't that great. It's very much lacking. And most of the romantic tension between them comes simply from the lines that are written and not the way she's able to force. And it just feels fake and it feels wrong between the two of them as well. Spiner not only portrays these nice human emotions, this sadness and all of this, but he also has a lot of really great comedic moments within Generations, in a film that is otherwise very serious, very gloomy, very unhappy. He provides us with this levity that we need within the film.
Well, I think that's the issue. I think Data struggle with his emotions. It hinges on Spiner's performance, and I think he gets everything wrong. And he does treat it as a comedy, but I think Star Trek at its core is a lot deeper than that. That he really could have gone a lot more into it. And you say about him not playing a machine feeling emotions before. There were several episodes within Star Trek The Next Generation where he played Lore, Data's brother, who had the emotion chip, and that's who gave the emotion chip to Data in the first place. I think Persis Kambata was new to the part, new to the role, and where Brent Spiner had been Data for 7 years, and not just Data, but Lore and Noonien Singh, the creator of Data. So he should have understood the part, and he should have even better understood the point of what Star Trek is as a whole.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you're making an argument based on stuff that isn't from the films, and this is a debate about within the movies. Within the movies, within this one movie versus that one movie, Data, Brent Spiner, is giving the better performance. He's giving the more interesting performance. He's giving the performance that we actually like to watch, and not one that is boring and dreary and sucks the life out of the film. The scene in Generations where Data is getting drunk at the bar with Guinan and Geordie is really enjoyable. We get to see him make us have fun. We connect with the film. We connect with his character. At no point does Persis Kambata make us connect with Ilea or V'ger.
But I think when you look at Star Trek First Contact, when he's with the Borg Queen for so long and experiencing that temptation, that is a really good performance from Brent Spiner and really believable performance. But Star Trek Generations is the complete opposite of that. And Ilea is a machine.
Time. All right. Holzmann, you get to close your argument first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
You can say that Brent Spiner is better in First Contact all you want. That's not the movie we're debating. We're debating Generations. And in Generations, regardless of if he's not as good, he is still good in this movie, and he's still better than Persis Kambata. Like you said, Ilea is playing machine. So is Data. The difference is that Data plays a machine that we actually like, that we actually connect with, that we actually feel something for, and we get to see him go through a journey with his character. With Persis Kambata as Ilea/V'ger, the moment she becomes V'ger, she sucks the life out of the film even more so, despite the fact that it should be honestly a relatively easy character to portray. We've seen people portray lifeless robots within fandom films, within Star Trek films even, and do a really good, really interesting job. But Kambata isn't able to keep up with it. Whereas Spiner takes that character, takes the same idea of a character without emotions, and then when given emotions, brings us something new to the table, brings us genuine emotion, brings us the ability to cry, even if it is at such a small moment. We like him, we relate to him. And again, Shatner himself said it, stunningly bad. I don't know how else to put it.
All right. Joe, you now have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
I think the difference is that Shatner never actually had to work with Brent Spiner in any of his scenes in Star Trek Generations. I think the fact is that Ilea's mechanical performances come when she's a machine. And as I said in my original argument, is that when Ilea is herself, she manages to convey in a very short space of time her feelings for Decker, establish that her feelings, and she doesn't have a lot to do as the real Ilea, but when she does, she can do it with just the voice and just the eyes. She portrays that emotion from him. Spiner, I said, it is about the performance. And when you see what is possible from Brent Spiner as Data, with emotions or without emotions, I think that's where you have to realize that where his performance went so wrong in Star Trek Generations is that he should have understood this character. He played it for 7 years, and after in Star Trek First Contact, he showed exactly how good he could be in that role. And when you look at Star Trek Generations, it's clunky, it's a mess, it doesn't work. It's Star Trek at its heart has always been about connecting with its audience and showing in metaphors how things can be, and he gets it completely wrong in Star Trek Generations. It's treated as a joke.
Time. Okie dokie. Artichoke. Are we good? Okay, I'm gonna start it.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna go with Cammy H.
I'll take it.
I thought that. Are you okay? I can't tell if he's talking about Cammy H or about how my choice. So I went with Cam because ultimately I think Joe argued why this is the worst Brent Spiner performance out of Brent Spiner performances, but Cam was able to tell me why this was just why his character, his actress, was the worst performance in Star Trek in general, not just the movie, and between the two movies as well. So I think that's mainly why I'm going with Cam. Cody, you're going next.
My reaction was definitely to the Cammy H. It was really hard to sit back here and watch two people just bash like a franchise that I absolutely adore and love. Well, I think that's a reaction of that. Sorry, that's really weird. Overall, as much as I love the TV show, you brought the TV show up a little bit too much when the movies was the main point, so I had to go with Cam.
Okay. Brian, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
Well, I voted based on my personal favorite character, and then, no. I also voted for Cameron, because basically, I mean, they both made good points, but I think Cameron kind of drove it home where he talked about how Spiner, you know, at least when he wasn't doing the moments where it was dealing with emotion, he still had other good moments in the film. He had good performances when it wasn't all about the emotions, whereas Persis, whether she was Ilea or V'ger, was kind of shitty the whole way through. So.
Okay, so Cam does win the first point, but we move on to question number 2, which is going to come in the category of musicals, chosen by Mr. Holzmann. Your question is, what is the most heartfelt song in a 21st century musical? So Cameron, you drafted this. You get to go first. 1 minute when you start talking.
Sorry, I just need to grab my notebook 1 second. So when talking about the most heartfelt song in a 21st century musical, we have to go straight to the word. What does heartfelt mean? And I'm going to be that guy who brings up the dictionary. The dictionary defines heartfelt as sincere, deeply, and strongly felt. And I think there is no musical that has stronger, more sincere, and more deep feelings in any film from the 21st century from a musical than the reprise of I'll Cover You from Rent. For a little bit of context, the song is sung by Collins at the funeral for Angel, his lover who has recently passed away. And what the song does is it takes the song that earlier in the film was their own love theme, their duet that they sang together with the two of them, and it recontextualizes it into him singing it as essentially a eulogy for her. He is weeping. He is breaking down. He is giving his entire soul to this song, pleading to the universe and pleading to Angel to come back, to be with him still. And it just hurts every fiber of your being.
Time. All right, we move over to Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute to open when you start talking.
When talking about heartfelt songs, it's sometimes easy for a love song to enter the conversation, but to sing from the heart is also to sing about your truth. And in a musical, it's usually a character bearing their soul and venting everything they've had to endure. And for me, Drive It Like You Stole It from Sing Street is the most heartfelt song in a musical from the 21st century. When it comes to musicals, it's not just the words that matter, it's the visualization on screen. It can go a long way to translating what is going on in that character's head. Here we have Connor giving his big performance, and throughout the movie we have seen his journey, the way people have treated him, his disillusioned brother, his parents on the verge of divorce, And here he sings from the heart that it's time to leave it all behind and set out on his own journey. You know, visually throughout the performance, you know, Connor sees his brother finally stand up for himself, his parents dancing together, his school headmaster finally sort of accepting him. But Connor and the audience all see that this is his fantasy, and that for Connor, it is time to leave it all behind. And that's what makes it heartfelt, is because in this moment, Connor is singing his truth.
Time. All right. Sing Street, Rent. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
I think the original, I'll Cover You, not the reprise, is the more heartfelt for me. Both, you know, Angel and Collins know that this can only end tragically. And to capture the joy of what they can have together in whatever time they have, I think is far more beautiful. The reprise is beautiful, but the original feels more heartfelt as it captures the joy of what they can achieve together. And I think that is a lot harder to portray than pain. Pain is not easy to portray, but I think to portray the joy within pain is a lot harder to do.
See, I think the problem with the original, though, is that it is very cheesy in the way it's performed and the way that it is sequenced, with the two of them just literally running through the streets of New York, being in love, being so happy. By taking this song, taking their love theme, taking the song that like contextualizes and emblemizes their relationship, and putting it into this new context where we have it being sung at the funeral, we have it being sung with this deep emotion, with him breaking, with their friends in the background also mourning and joining in on it, bringing in the main theme of 525,600 minutes. It brings a lot to the table. Whereas with Sing Street, you talk about the sequence, but I think the biggest thing is that it's designed more than anything, regardless of those small moments that you talk about. It's constantly said and it's constantly designed that it's an homage to Back to the Future. And at its core, that's kind of what it is. And for the most part, it seems very on the surface. It doesn't seem very deep. It's really easy to miss those small moments, and it kind of takes away from it.
But I think it shows Connor at his most genuine. You know, he's tried to win Rafina over with Up and with Find You, and he's tried to find his own sound when it comes to songs like Riddle of the Model. Stood up to his authority with the Brown Shoes, but it's Drive It Like You Stole It. That every trial and tribulation that he's been through comes out. He's at his most genuine. You know, he's freedom. He's taking it back, and he's going to get out of there. You know, it's there's no denying that Cover You is heartfelt, but if you can't be vulnerable at the funeral of, you know, your love, then I think something might be wrong. But to go through so much in such a short space of time, and to come out with a performance saying, you know what, I will not follow in the footsteps or take the path that people want from me. You know, I am going to pursue my dream and live my life the way I want to be, which in 80s Island is no easy thing to do. I think that just the passion behind that, you know, it is genuine, it is sincere, and it is deeply and strongly felt by Connor. You know, it may be a very upbeat song, but the passion behind it is what makes it heartfelt and really powerful.
See, but I don't even think it's the most genuine, most heartfelt, most Connor showing us who he is and his real feelings in it. That, I think, goes to the bedroom reprise of Up, where it is him sitting in sadness, sitting alone, singing that song that he wrote for Rafina, realizing to himself that he may never actually get this. He may never be here. With the Drive It Like You Stole It scene, you keep saying, like, it shows this and it shows this and it's to all these different people. By dividing its focus, it kind of almost loses part of this message where there is the, like, you can't stand the way that I walked out from the wreckage and stuff. Sure, that's him giving somewhat of a message to his parents or to Brother Baxter. And then there's the messages about being in love, finding someone, just like the I Heard an Angel Calling. That all of a sudden switches the focus to Rafina, and it kind of gets distracting. It kind of takes us away from the point of the first half of the song, moves it to a new place. It's not coherent and consistent, so it's hard to get deeply invested in what's being sung to us.
But it is coherent to his truth. It's his story. You know, he's had the issues with his brother. He's had the issues with his family, with the headmaster at the school, and with Rafina herself. And all of this, it's encompassing that journey into one big performance at the school prom at the end. And it's just the passion behind what he's singing is that everyone has tried to put him on a different path, and he is, you know, taking back his freedom, you know, taking it back out of there in a baby blue Cadillac as he sings.
But it's not even a performance at their school prom. It's a fantasy sequence in his head. It's a dream. It's not him actually getting to say these things to these people. It's not him actually getting to get this message across to everyone. Collins gets
so it's his personal journey with
his family. They support him.
It's his personal journey within, and that's the point. The fantasy that he has tried to create for himself, and within that fantasy, he sees, you know, his brother stand up to someone. He sees his parents back together, but in that fantasy, he realizes that it is just a fantasy, and the point of the song is he needs to break out from that fantasy and go on his own journey, because that's what he needs. Like I said, the issue with Cover You is that, it is a beautiful song. It's beautifully performed, but I think when you compare it to some of the other songs in there and just the genuine heartfelt truth of these characters, is that it's a very emotional moment, but it's not the most heartfelt, because the pain is there and it's bared for all to see. But to convey that pain in a joyful way, as they do in the original Cover You, I think is much more powerful and harder to do.
Time. Okay. Joe is going to kick off the closings on this one. Joe, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
I think in art, pain is very easy to convey. But to use that passion and pain to portray the ecstasy and joy of life's potential is one of the most heartfelt things I think an artist can do. Both Drive It Like You Stole It in the original Cover You transform that pain of these tormented lives into ecstatic beauty and joy, which for Connor, it makes it that heartfelt song. It's about him breaking out of this fantasy that he's had and these things that are tying him down, and to break out into the world that he needs to create for himself. I think with the reprise of Cover You, it sums up Colin's feelings in a way, but the original song within Rent transforms the pain of everything that's coming before them. They know that they only have a short time left. They both know that they're afflicted with AIDS and it cannot end well, but they still portray that joy beautifully.
All right, Holzmann, you now have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
Like you said, in the original I'll Cover You, they take this pain and they turn it to joy. And then the reprise undoes that all, and it hits even harder because of it. It takes their joy, it takes their happiness in this time of trial where they have hope, they have this feeling of like that they can have a future together. And we see what happens when it gets ripped away from them. We see the emotion that they both feel. We see this reflected through their song. This message of like wanting to live together, to be together, to love each other forever. Like it gives us this beautiful, heartfelt, genuine, sincere, deep, strong feeling, which is what being heartfelt is all about. It's having that strong feeling. While Sing Street has these moments of he has these hopes, he has these dreams and stuff, by putting it in this fantasy sequence and by putting it through just the standard musical metaphor of it's cars, it's girls, it's a dance, it kind of weakens the metaphor by putting it through stereotype instead of filtering it through a genuine, powerful emotion and performance from the lead.
Time. Okie dokie.
I was crying because it was so emotional.
So heartfelt.
So heartfelt.
I wrote these arguments earlier today while in a hospital.
Oh,
I wrote them this morning after watching Rent.
oh.
Okay. Brian, you get to start.
All right. I liked when Joe was talking about how, just because something's upbeat doesn't mean it can't be heartfelt, because I agree with him on that. He also made a good point when he was talking about how, you're already at a funeral, so the scene isn't kind of what made that moment so dramatic. So if you can't make him feel at a funeral, something's wrong. Although I do think Cameron hit back good with talking about how the song in Sing Street really divided the focus, and it kind of takes away from, being able to just feel the emotion on one level. So I did actually end up voting for Cameron.
All right, I'll go next. I went with Joey F. As I didn't like the openings. I wasn't sold with Joe's argument. I was kind of all Cameron, but I thought that that moment that Brian just talked about the dividing the focus, I thought Joe had a really good comeback for that, being like, this is his journey, his moment, his story, all those things coming together in one moment, and it's very heartfelt for him, which doesn't make it any less heartfelt when it's all of the characters in Rent doing that funeral scene. So I went with Joe. Cody, you get to decide this one.
So I'm going to address this before anybody calls bullshit. One.
Bullshit.
You hate both these movies, don't you?
Me and Brian like one of these movies.
Okay. I didn't know if you liked
the
that.
other
I think
one.
they're just divided on which one they like.
No, I think we both like Rent.
No, I know it. Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Sing Street. I've said that before. I've come around onto it a little bit, but that does not impact my decision. What I will say is when sometimes picking arguments, I think there are correct answers, but you still have to debate those correct answers well. I think that's what Cam did with this. I think it was very close. Joe took a song that I didn't really think of, but painted it really well. But it was just so hard to overcome. I Will Cover You, the reprise, in what they were hitting to take that away. But great job overall, because I would have never in a billion years picked that song, Joe, and it made it close. So.
All right.
Is this where I mentioned that I don't think Sing Street is a musical?
Plus, I was going to wonder if you were going to pull that. But I was also going to be like, I was playing Devils on Shoulders. I would never do this, but I wanted to make Cam lose the musical question and make him win a Star Trek question and make him have a mental breakdown on call. I didn't do that.
That's fair. Okay, so we're going to move on to question number 3. Joe does need to hit this in order to stay in the game. The question is from a category drafted by Joe. It's directors, and the question is, what Guy Ritchie movie should get a sequel? So Joe, you drafted this. You're going to get to go first. You have 1 minute to open when you start talking.
Guy Ritchie has always had a talent for the British crime movie. He has a strong command of characters, wit, and a proper sense of style when it comes to these movies. And prior to The Gentleman, his last real foray into this world was with 2008's Rock and Roller, which is my pick for which Guy Ritchie movie deserves a sequel. Unlike his previous movies, Lock, Stock, and Snatch, this one ended in a way that invited a sequel. After the death of his father, Johnny Quid, played mesmerizingly by Toby Kebbell, steps into the fold, vowing to be the real rock and roller. And with Gerard Butler's 1-2 and Idris Elba's Mumbles, a phone call away from their next job, this movie was set up to expand into a larger world. The Real Rock and Roller is a movie that has been teased by Ritchie and by in pretty much every news outlet since 2008. And every time he's asked about it, every time he mentions it or it's brought up in an interview, it generates buzz. And this shows that there is a demand for it, and it really does deserve a sequel.
Time. All right. Move over to Mr. Holzmann. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think one of the biggest problems with Guy Ritchie as a director is that a lot of his movies feel tonally the same. It is a lot of lowbrow British crime, watching people exist in the same sort of spaces where you have your Lock, Stock, you have your Snatch, you have your Rock and Rolla. But every once in a while, he comes around and he does something different from his regular style, and it pays off. Like in my pick, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. came out in 2015, and people kind of didn't really expect much from it. People weren't expecting it to be amazing. People weren't super excited for it. And when people saw it, people loved it. People raved for it. People have been craving and clamoring for a sequel because it's really enjoyable. It's really new, and it's really interesting. You have great charisma and great chemistry between a pair of leads. You have sort of the buddy comedy aspect that Ritchie is able to do and write really, really well. And you can put it in this sort of higher stakes environment that leads to more interesting stories. Whereas all of the other crime films like Rock and Rolla are much more smaller, much more local. By giving Ritchie this big scope, he's able to do a lot more and make it a lot more interesting for the audience.
I've seen one of these movies.
I've seen neither.
I'll tell you afterwards which one I've seen. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
We'll get the easy part out of the way. First of all, Army Hammer. It's persona non grata right now. That's going to be an issue straight away. And also, Guy Ritchie, out of all of, you say that all these crime movies are the same, but the one he has always said that he himself believes deserves a sequel is Rock and Roller, and he's even titled it The Real Rock and Roller. It's just not being made yet.
Absolutely. I knew that the Army Hammer thing was going to come up. It was kind of impossible to avoid with, the world being the way it is. Here's the thing. You can make a sequel and get rid of Army Hammer. You can put in a new character. You can put in a replacement for him. We replace James Bond every 6 or 7 years. We can replace an Army Hammer as a random spy for a second movie. I even thought about it. I looked into it. I think that a great pick to replace him as this American spy is Henry Golding. I think Henry Golding is very charismatic. I think he's very interesting. He can play that part really, really well. And plus it adds a little bit more diversity to the film because Guy Ritchie's films typically are filled with just kind of a bunch of white guys. And I think that should change. So I think Henry Golding is really good. He can have that chemistry with Henry Cavill, and they can have a lot of fun with it.
But I think, speaking of James Bond, like Daniel Craig in Layer Cake, I think Uncle seems more like Man from Uncle seems a little bit more like Henry Cavill's audition for Bond. But I think you also have to look at what's inside Rock and Roller. You know, people like Gerard Butler and Idris Elba, they still want to do it. Toby Kebbell would still want to do it. Thandue Newton still wants to do it. You know, neither of these movies, but another point, just neither of these movies had particularly good box office returns. I think the 75 million budget for Uncle with 107 return and an 18 million budget for Rock and Roller with a 25 million return. But the point is, with Rock and Roller, with making a sequel like that, you can make it on a lower budget, which makes it the better option for a sequel. And the Rock and Roller now has a cult following, and a sequel is very much in demand. Every time Guy Ritchie is interviewed, it's brought up, and it generates huge buzz online.
And the thing is, I think in terms of talk, I think we can talk in terms of budget and box office all we want. The thing is, Man from Uncle, sure, it didn't make a lot of money in the theater, but people started to find it after it was in the theater, after it came out on DVD, after it was streaming places, and they fell in love with it. And the thing is, we live in a world where we can make these big budget blockbusters and send them out. And nowadays, they can actually make a lot of money, especially with the following that the first one has gotten. As well with Rock and Roll. I think one of the biggest problems with it is at the end of it sets us in this position where Johnny has gone to rehab, and we've seen these guys, they get the painting, like they're sort of stepping out with this freedom, this new lease on life and everything. We've seen movies like that before. We've seen the idea of criminals who kind of get out, are able to escape, are able to live their lives, and then get pulled back in somehow, get brought in for this new job. We've seen that in Sexy Beast. We've seen that in T2 Train Spotting, which I think is an incredible sequel. Like, we've had movies that tonally fit the idea of bringing people back into this world when they're stuck, especially even British people back into this British crime world that have done it already. We haven't seen a sequel for Man from Uncle. We don't see British and American spies combined. We see this disillusion really between the two. And with James Bond now going on a hiatus after No Time to Die, there's an opening in the market that they can fill.
But I think, and going to your point, there are a couple of globe-trotting, sleek spy franchises around. You have James Bond, you have Mission Impossible, and what we don't have is a sleek, gritty, witty crime franchise. These characters are part of a world that was set up to continue. Guy Ritchie has already done a sequel to an established IP with Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows. So it would be great to see him do something new and do a sequel to one of his own original ideas. The Man from Uncle was based on a TV show. So to see Guy Ritchie come out and explore something in a world that he created, not one that was necessarily created for him, would be a much more interesting journey to see Guy Ritchie go on. You can bring back Gerard Butler, you can bring back Idris Elba, bring back Thandie Newton. She can return. Her character has a lot more to be explored about her. She had a real sense of mystery about her, and it'd be great to get even deeper into about her life.
The thing is, you're saying that him going off of a concept that isn't his doesn't make it work. We've seen that with directors all the time before. We saw that his Sherlock Holmes was great. He took a concept that wasn't his of the Man from Uncle, and he made it incredible. Rock and Roll, sure, it's good. Sure, he can make a sequel. But at the end of the day, he's taking something that he's already made and making a sequel, regardless of which of our movies you pick. And if I wanted to, like Guy Ritchie, if I want to see a new, gritty, darker crime film from him that's a little greasy, a little grimy, a little more local, I can get that from any film from him. And with Kingsman going back into World War I, James Bond going on a hiatus, all we have right now is Mission Impossible. There is a big opening for a new spy franchise. The Man from Uncle should take it.
Okie dokie. No, that's wrong. Cameron gets to close first on this one. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
At the end of the day, by making a sequel to Rock and Rolla, you're giving us something that we've already seen before. We've seen it in T2 Trainspotting. We've seen it in Sexy Beast. We've seen it in all these things. We've seen it in most Guy Ritchie movies because most of them are similar in their local, gritty, kind of gross, lowbrow feel. The Man from Uncle is a unique thing from Guy Ritchie. It's something we don't see from him that often, and it's something new and something refreshing to get from him. It's something that we can do in this new way. We can do with a new cast. We can bring in new characters. We can make it interesting. We can get this great action. We can fill the void that is being left in the spy genre. We can fill all these spaces and combine these things, combine the American and British spy tropes into something that plays on both of them, fills the new role. As well, you have it set in a more interesting time period. You have it set in the 60s or even the early 70s. You can move it up a few years. And it gives us these more interesting issues that we can take, whereas just setting a rock and roll sequel now, a modern crime film set in gritty, grimy London right now, we got that with Wrath of Man. We got that with The Gentleman. We don't need another film like that.
All right, bring in Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Introducing us to the kind of characters that he's presented in Snatch, Lock, Stock, The Gentleman, and Rock and Roller is something that Guy Ritchie has always done very, very well. And we've seen that he can do a sequel to an existing IP that he's already covered with Sherlock Holmes and what he may be doing with Aladdin 2. But a sequel to his own idea is something we've not seen before. You said it yourself. T2 Trainspotting 2 was great. And it would be good to see him moving into the Danny Boyle world of creating a sequel to an idea of his own, Trainspotting being based on a book. So it would be really good to see Guy Ritchie do something that he's not done before and actually create a sequel to one of these British crime movies that all these characters he's created, they've been left, but this is the one that he left set up for a sequel. He's been teasing the sequel. The final line is, I'm going to become the real rock and roller. It's all there, laid bare, waiting for that sequel to come. And I think, Mission Impossible will fill that void. It won't. It's next year they'll start talking about the next one. Bond will be back, and that's the point. I think with Guy Ritchie, it will be good to see him do something that he's not done before, whereas Man from U.N.C.L.E. is an existing IP.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I got to write shit down, don't I? No.
Act like you've been here before.
Oh. It's kind of like when your mom asks you to do the dishes and you do a shitty job hoping she never asks you again. What?
Cody says, as one of the people that runs this place, just don't make it.
I'm just pissed off that no one picked King Arthur. Like, that shit was fun.
I just like to point out that Cameron said he's never seen either movie and then said that Man from U.N.C.L.E. is amazing.
More CGI, I'm just saying.
You could have picked Sherlock Holmes 3.
But Dexter Fletcher's already doing that.
Yeah. Is he? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, he should stop because I like the first two.
I don't know how I feel. I'm going last, right? I'm not confident. Okay. No, this is what I'm going with. I
go written down before we can start. So.
Yep. That's why I write down before we start.
I go first, right?
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, we call that the Shark Tail Brother Bear situation. So there's a lot of shit discussed in this one. A lot of Army Hammer eating people need to be replaced. British and American coming together. That happened. It was a war. Overall, I think we won. Just so you know, kicked your ass. But here's the thing. This is like a ball. This is like somebody came in playing a different sport. Joe was pro master at the sport. He knows Guy Ritchie films. I think overall Cam did a really good job of keeping it away from plot and everything else about the movies and saying why things work. But I just think overall Joe hammered it home for me to make it close. But it was kind of close. But
Brian, you go next.
I think a lot of time was spent talking about things that aren't really factors. There was time talked about like which one made the most money, which cast is more willing to come back or can come back, which ones are already kind of set up, are like the director wants to do it. A lot of stuff that is not the question of which one should get it, it's which one's more likely to get it. However, I think what convinced me was actually Joe basically kind of pointing out that, it'd be nice to have a sequel to one of his original properties, kind of see where the characters are going. And I honestly think that Cameron almost kind of helped him with the T2 reference, because you take these characters, you kind of show that movie showed years later how they grew. You can do the same thing with Joe's characters. Whereas I think with Man from U.N.C.L.E., yes, it'd be cool to see a sequel, but it's really going to be kind of more of the same.
All right, so Joe wins the point. My vote doesn't count, thank God. But no, I also went with Jojo Rabbit. I personally, I haven't seen Rock and Rolla, but Joe painted a very good picture to me of why this sequel is ripe for the making and should be made. And I agree with Brian. I thought that his whole point of what Brian exactly just said, that like Cam spent a lot of time talking about like who'd be willing to come back, all that stuff.
That was
also,
not me that did that. But...
Both of them were doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm saying you were talking about bringing in Henry Golding and not Armie Hammer and all that stuff. But anyway, I will say I saw The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and I hated it. I think that movie sucks. Cody, yes, you wanted to say something.
If a player makes me sad during a debate, can I take a point away?
I don't know.
Because he kept saying that Bond was going away, and I remember Daniel Craig's not returning as James Bond anymore after this, and it made me sad, so I want to take a point away.
I'm okay with that. I'll give a point to make up for that. I'll give a point to make up for that.
All right. So...
Is this where I show the thing in my notebook where I have double underlined, avoid the Armie Hammer controversy? I was really hoping we wouldn't go there and you hit straight with it.
It's my first note.
So Joe avoids the knockout. We move on to question 4, which was drafted by Mr. Holzmann in the category of Disney live action. The question is, what is the best moment in a 2000s Disney live action movie? So Holzmann, you drafted this. You get to go first. 1 minute when you start talking.
So we were given the very broad category of Disney live action, and me and Joe kind of just ended up picking 2 scenes from the same franchise. Weird. What a coincidence. It's almost like there's one with a lot of really great moments, and we both picked one from that. I picked the Isla Cruces fight from Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. That's the massive visual set piece in Dead Man's Chest where you have the like water wheel rolling through the island and they're sword fighting on top of it. And it's the 3-way sword fight between Will, Jack, and Norrington. And then while that's going on, you also have the Dutchman crew coming onto the land. Pinto, Rigetti, Elizabeth getting involved. And I think it's just a great example of all the different things that Pirates of the Caribbean as a trilogy, as a franchise does combined really well into one scene. You have this incredible action sequence with some of the greatest fight choreography and action set pieces we've ever seen. The fight on the wheel is legitimately beautifully choreographed. The sword fighting is incredible, and the way they stage that action is great. You also have a lot of comedy and a lot of character. You have Jack convincing Norrington that Will is the one who ruined his life, despite the fact that Jack clearly is. You see these characters, you get a clear image of them, and great action.
Strike great action from the record.
I said it already, so we're good.
Joe, you get 1 minute when you start talking.
So it's clear that we both maybe kind of agree that Pirates of the Caribbean is probably one of Disney's strongest live-action franchises. First 3 being the standout, of course. But Curse of the Black Pearl, I think, shines brightest. Captain Jack Sparrow is an iconic character, and the best moments within that franchise center around him. And as the film goes on, we see more and more why Jack is the most famous pirate around. But until the moment we see him and Will steal the Interceptor, we've pretty much seen Jack as a bit of a lucky character, a bit of a good things seem to happen to him sort of character. But it's within this moment where he and Will are stealing the Interceptor that you understand why he is so good. It's a great character moment. It's a moment of cunning and foresight, and one where the audience doesn't really know what is happening until it happens. You know, you're on Will's side at the start, but once Jack's plan is revealed, you sit back and you smile at the genius of Jack Sparrow, and that's why it is the greatest moment.
Time. All right. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
So the thing is, you said that up until that point, we haven't seen how smart Jack is as a character, and I think that's blatantly untrue. We learn how smart Jack is as a character from moment, and I would say moment 1, but his introduction is boat sinking. From moment 2, we see that Jack is brilliant. He is able to just walk around in Port Royale basically undetected because he knows how to talk to people. He knows how to be at the right place at the right time. He knows where to go, what to do. He proves that he is intelligent as a pirate and knows what he's doing and managed to get away. Does he have some luck at certain points? Absolutely. But saying that that's the first time we see him be smart is just flat out incorrect.
But it's that great moment. It's that moment where you finally really understand it, because you are on Will's side for most of it. You know, you see the way he escapes the guards at Port Royal when he flings up in the air and he managed to walk around, and it all seems a bit lucky. But here, in that he steals the Dauntless with the complete intention of having the guards themselves get the Interceptor ready for sailing, and just swings aboard, steals it right from under them. It is a great moment. You know, Pirates is at its best with the intimate, more personal fight scenes. I think Jack and Will in the blacksmiths, Jack and Barbossa in the cave. I think the wheel scene itself adds too much silliness. We've seen Jack be lucky in terms of just blatant geography of the setting before, but I think it's a bit too much here. There's a bit too much going on.
See, but the thing is, I think like saying that it adds too much silliness to a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, I think is a moot point. These movies are silly and cartoonish at points. They are ridiculous. The movie opens with a man walking off of a sinking boat, and the first one has massive sequences of him getting really lucky and getting away. That doesn't make it out of place. It just makes it coherent with the tone of the film. It has incredible action direction. It has incredible stakes. And if you want to see like, if what you're saying shows how smart Jack is intellectually, which I don't think it does, I think we see that beforehand. What we see in the Isla Cruces fight is we see how smart Jack is socially. Norrington, who is on a hunt to kill Jack to get his job back, in the middle of this fight is convinced by Jack that Jack isn't the bad guy. Will is. Will took everything away from him. Will is the person they should be fighting, and gets Norrington to basically ignore him for a majority of the fight. And then they're both up against Will, who is the person Jack wants gone from the fight. He shows us what he can do as a social character, and it's a brilliant moment.
But at the end of that moment, at the end of all that, his one goal, he fails at. He doesn't get the heart in the end. Norrington wins the heart in the end. So for all that cunning of trying to put Norrington onto Will, Norrington is the one that ends up with the heart. With this moment, not only does it show his cleverness, he shows how his cleverness can make him successful, because he is successful in stealing the interceptor. The Will fight, it has too much to the point it takes away from what could have been a really epic fight. Whereas, you look at how the scene at World's End, the final fight there with the wedding going on, there is a lot going on there, but it just seems a lot more coherent and a lot better paced and a lot better organized than the scene at Isla Cruces. My moment is admittedly smaller, but it is greater in what it does for the character themselves and what it does for the audience watching these characters.
See, but I disagree. Isla Cruces' fight has clear stakes set up for all three characters in the fight. Jack is so desperate to keep his freedom, to avoid going to prison, to avoid being killed, that he's willing to turn Norrington on his would-be best friend, the person he's closest to in the world, of Will. Will is so desperate to save his father that he's ready to kill Will so that he can get the heart. And Norrington is so desperate to kill Jack to restore his station in life that he is willing to do whatever it takes. You have this incredible dynamic of three people all at like almost their lowest point, who are desperate to get something, and the only thing in their way is the other two, and it comes to a head. The interceptor fight, the interceptor raid, has almost no stakes. It's just a means to an end to get them off of Port Royal. And sure, there's that little cool moment of them like swinging onto the boat, but that's it. It also serves to make Will look kind of like a fool, a guy who we see has grown up on ships, who says he's trained for 3+ hours a day to fight a pirate. And then when he shows up and is being a pirate, he says, "I, avast," and it just undercuts his character.
But the point of Jack Sparrow is to show and is to bring Will into this world. Will may have had the training, Will may have done all the book learning, but he needs that experience that Jack has, and that's what Jack brings out in him, showing him that, all right, it may not look like I'm doing what I should be doing here. Come on, they're easily going to catch us in the Dauntless. That is not my plan. You need to trust me on this, and it's what it does. You get the audience to trust you, and he gets Will to trust him at the same point. It's a good. Your moment is a good fun moment, but a real great moment is one that gives you everything you need for the film going forward, and that's exactly what this does. You find, Jack. Then, and I don't agree with the fact that there aren't stakes. The whole reason if they get caught doing this, then they're in trouble, and Will is going to go to prison for a very, very long time. So it does have the stakes, whereas the fight seems more of an A to a B.
But that's the stakes present at all moments of the franchise.
All right. Joe, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Throughout Curse of the Black Pearl, we see the film going on, and you understand more and more who Jack is. But it's this moment that really gives you that insight into who the character is. We've seen him be lucky before. We've seen him escape through crazy geography before, as he does in the Isla Cruces fight. But here, it really shows the cunning of Jack Sparrow, and it's something that's not done quite as often as it should be within the franchise. And I think it's where the franchise got diluted towards the end. This moment makes the audience trust Jack Sparrow, makes Will trust Jack Sparrow, and it's a moment that you just sit back and smile once you've seen it. It's a really fantastic character moment. It's what established Jack Sparrow. It's why part of the reason Johnny Depp received the supporting actor nomination for this movie. I think the Isla Crusades fight is thrilling, but it's a means to an end. It's a point A to a point B. It's how can we make the sword fight from Curse better? But the sword fight is not what makes Curse better. It's the small character moments with Jack Sparrow. And at the end of the day, Jack is successful here where he's not.
All right. We move over to Cameron, who has 1 minute to close when he starts talking.
I think you're discounting a lot of what happens in the Isla Cruces fight over the Interceptor raid, because the Interceptor raid is more towards the beginning of an arc and the Isla Cruces fight is towards the end. You're saying that the Interceptor sets up characters and that Isla Cruces doesn't. Isla Cruces doesn't have to. It's near the end of a second movie. That's not the purpose of the scene. That's not what it's there to do. And it still gives us a lot of interesting information about the characters' social skills, about the stakes that they have, about how far they're willing to go to get what they want, and how many people they are willing to betray as well. We've seen Jack do things before already. We like Jack from moment one. We are trained to like Jack. We are shown to like Jack from moment one, where he shows up on the screen, shows up on the dock, and we see him and we like him. You're also discounting the moment because Jack isn't successful in his thing. So what? That doesn't ruin the moment. It just makes the story, it brings the story to a new and more interesting place. It doesn't matter that he doesn't succeed. The moment is still good, and as much as it may not have worked out the way he planned and worked out for a different character, it's still a great moment with great stakes, great action, and altogether a better scene than yours.
Time. All right. We all good?
Yeah, Koho's not here.
Yeah, it's weird. Brian, you're good?
Yeah, it's okay because I beat him in a Pirates random match. So
that's true. You knew more. How many?
Is this where I also say Johnny Depp was nominated for Best Actor, not Supporting Actor, Joe?
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's 4 a.m.
Point.
All right. I'm going to go first.
I had to change my foot for that.
I'm going to go first. I went with Cam optimized for IMAX. I thought that Cameron painted the better picture of why his scene has incredible stakes for all the characters involved. The action is good. The set pieces are great. And that Joe's scene is good. It's just a one-off moment that doesn't really mean much at the end of the day. I thought Joe fought it well for what it was worth, but I thought that Cam overall just kind of had this from the beginning and went off. So, Cody, you're next.
Who?
You, Cody.
Okay. We broke up, so I was just making sure.
Sorry.
So yeah, this was an interesting fight. Joe picked probably the funniest scene from that the trilogy for me. Because it's a trilogy. But overall, like I just think the overall everything that's in Cam's scene is just so hard to argue against. And I think he did a really good job of trying to. It was uphill battle for me. I had to go with Cam. There's so much in that scene for Cam's scene versus him stealing the Interceptor, and it just fell flat for me on that one. So.
All right, Brian, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
I disagree completely. I gave it to Joe. For me, the fact that there was so much going on in the scene, so many different things in the scene, that's kind of one of the reasons it wasn't as good to me, because the question was the best moment. And I mean, both of them are kind of talking about whole scenes and sequences. We're not talking about a moment, but they were obviously both accepted as answers, so you take them. But for me, looking in the answer, I'm looking for why that is a moment that's key. And I thought that Joe made a really good point from the very beginning, that from that moment in the Intercept, you realize, wait, Captain Jack's not just this buffoon. He's not just lucky. It's like he knows what's going on. There's more to him than you see. And he's an intelligent guy. He has a plan of the genius of Jack Sparrow, as he put it. I thought that was a great point. And while I loved Isla Cruces scene, I mean, I picked it in a previous debate. Don't think I got to argue it, but it was the best sword fight and best scene in the trilogy. I think that as a moment of what it does for defining the character, I give it to Joe easily.
All right. Well, with that,
it's crazy.
with that, your winner, Cameron Holzmann. We are going to start by talking to Joe. Joe, really great debate. A lot of those were very close. It just so happened that it didn't fall your way this time. I feel sad whenever you help us out by shooting very early in the morning for you and that it doesn't go your way. But I thought this was a really great debate. How do you feel?
Yeah, not too bad. Just on that, as I said in pre-match, I said that sometimes towards the end, at this time in the morning, my words can escape me. So to just get a point on the final argument makes me feel a little bit happy. I knew with the musicals one, especially with Cam, I faced a bit of an uphill struggle. So I did try to go outside of the box with my selection to try and make the argument a little bit more difficult. But he really did really well. A lot of those counterpoints, it's sometimes really hard to prepare. But, you know, for the Disney live action one, was my second choice was the other Crusades fight. So I really can't be too bothered about losing to it when I do think it is a really good moment. But yeah, it was a good debate, good fun, but just lacking a little bit.
Joe, now that you are out of this little title picture, we'll see you back next season in whatever the hell we decide to do. So who are you looking to debate next season?
It's tough. You know me, I'll argue against anyone.
Sounds good. You want to play Brian?
Why not?
No, I don't know if that could
happen.
I don't know.
He gave me that last
yeah,
point.
Exactly. I don't know. But great match, Joe. We'll see you next season. Let's bring in the winner, Mr. Holzmann. You are moving on to another match. How are you feeling about the debate tonight?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. After that last fight, I'm very glad I let my friends talk me out of my pedantic squabble with myself of, is Isla Cruces a moment or is that a full scene, and will that be brought up by someone like Brian did? But it worked out, and I'm glad I didn't pick the Narnian lullaby from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because that's where I was leaning for a little while. Because if I'm gonna pick a Disney live action thing and it's me, it's probably Narnia. But no, I feel good. This was a lot of fun. Yeah. As I said earlier, I was like working all day today, locked away, unable to access technology. And all I had was my paper journal. And I went, oh yeah, this is tonight. And I realized I did not have time to watch either of the Guy Ritchie movies, which I had never seen. And so I knew that fight probably wasn't going my way. So I just started writing notes, and I spent 2 hours in a hospital trying to figure out who would be a good replacement for Armie Hammer. And I struggled a lot. And yeah.
Sounds about right. So Cam, you're moving on. You're one match away from a number one contenders match. Your next match is going to be against the former title challenger, Mr. Robert Parker. I believe some people call him the Spider. I don't really know. So you're going to be playing Robert in a few weeks here for a shot at the number one contenders. How you feeling?
Yeah, I feel good. I'll take whoever. Hopefully I schedule this on a day where I actually have time in advance to not have to write arguments for Rock and Roll via the Man from U.N.C.L.E. without having seen them and not being able to even look at plot summaries. I was just glad I was correct that's how Rock and Roll ends with my arguments. I was lucky enough that it worked out that way. But no, yeah, I'll face him. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, Cam. Well, we'll see you soon with that match. Final thoughts from Mr. Michaels. Brian.
It was a good debate. I enjoyed hearing both of them. I think my votes actually got split 2-2. So, obviously I enjoyed both people. Plus, I've judged a few times here, but I don't think I've ever judged either one of these. So it's always nice to hear new people.
Absolutely. Cody, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good thing we write down answers because Brian swayed me at the end with what he was saying. I was like, oh, dang, you're totally right. What the hell? But no, I like Brian being our third judge. I think he balances us out. I think he's really good at it. But the overall debate, I think maybe, Joe, catch us on a day that we can do during the day for you. I want to see what you're at, like when you don't have to stay up all night. Because I know you're really good at debate. Like I hear how you talk about films. So, but Holtzmann just, when it came down to Disney live action at the end, it was one of those, like, that's his ace in the hole at that point. He's really good. He knows those movies inside and out. So, yeah, overall, great debate. I think him versus Robert's going to be very interesting because they are polar opposites. So, and then what you get to pick, what you don't get to pick, stuff like that. So, it's going to play into factor. But, yeah, that will be a good fight. And, yeah, we're getting close to a title. So
we are getting very close to finding out who's going to play Kirk for the title. I'm really looking forward to it. So coming up in 2 weeks, we have the other side of this number one contenders picture. We've got Nazario Montenegro going up against Ryan O'Regan. The winner of that will play the winner of Holzmann and Parker. So either way, we've got interesting matches set up for Mr. Kirk. So looking forward to it. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you really soon with the next match. Be on the lookout for all of them and go and watch all the other things that are happening. There's tournaments in Fandom and Warzone and title matches abundant. Shots being made. I don't know. Shit's crazy. Game of Factions is soon. I'm losing my mind. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
That's my bad. I was sending a tweet.